Shabbat Shalom, everyone. So now we'll take a look at what we've learned from Jacob and Esau. Uh, it's a beautiful story. For me, I look at how practical the Torah is for us, how it gives us examples of what our forefathers did. And it has that, it's not just do this, do that, do this, because the Torah has a mystical element. When God is with us, as I said, I have watched doors open, things happen that I could never have imagined. Like the story of Jacob when he was getting ready to leave. He was going to leave with nothing. His uncle wasn't going to give him any cattle. And he said, "Well, just give me the ones that are spotted." And so his uncle took all those and had his sons bring them into the distance. And so he takes the cattle, the calves that are left, and he peels a branch, and he puts it in the ground while the animals were feeding, and then they come out spotted and striped. That's mystical because it's the power of suggestion won't do that. God is a God of mystery. He's a God of miracles, and he does miracles for you and I every single day of our lives. But it's a two-way street. I mean, it says he reigns on the good and on the evil, but when we're obedient, when we have a desire to follow his words, he opens so many more doors. And I've seen this in my life. And I love the story of Jacob to see what he went through and how much he learned. You know, that song, Ketonti Mikola Chasadim. If anyone has reason to feel unworthy because of the things that I've done in my life, it's me. And that's why whenever I'm showered with blessings that I just never expected. I just, I bow my head and just say, thank you, God. And I think we've all experienced that sense that we don't deserve all that God is doing for us. And so like Jacob, we can learn and then hopefully with time, thank God as I get older, I get wiser. It takes time to grow wisdom. Children aren't born with wisdom. They may be smart. Some are smart Alex. They act as if they know everything, like me at 18 when I thought I knew better than my parents. And so it's a wonderful, wonderful parasha.
Um, I'll just say a few things. It's hard to say more than you've said because it's so true. Um, well, just a few things. When you mentioned at one point Jacob is frightened, and so how many of us have been frightened and fear exact. But within even while being frightened, he took action, and taking action is so important, um, especially when you're afraid, and even with the idea of trust. Trust is not something that you just snap your fingers and it comes. You could be terrified, but you have to. The trust is believing that you'll come into that trust. It takes time, and we want to feel, like even with a person, you could trust them, but you don't really haven't grown into that yet. So everything takes time, and it's so important to take action in our lives, not just meaningless action, but inertia in all situations is very damaging,
Exactly.
and that's what I'm trying to do. We're trying to do with in my family now with the situation occurring. Action is so important.
Well, you saw that in your own life when you went
Yeah,
through
for
that period of
sure.
anxiety, how you went out, you forced yourself to go out for a
Yeah,
walk.
yeah.
And I see that in my life. If I'm ever really stuck and feeling low and down, get up and wash the dishes, make the bed, clean your house, do something. If you don't have a solution for something that is really heavy on your heart, you just keep going, and somehow God reveals something will come to your mind. You'll get a call. Something will happen because God is with us, which is, it's
Yeah,
that's what he said. I am with you wherever you go, and I promise I will not leave you. And that's what we need to remember. God promises to never leave us or forsake us.
yeah,
Yeah.
Well, I love something that you mentioned in this portion, and is that Jacob and Esau, they come together, they hug probably, uh, but they took different ways,
Yeah.
eh, separate ways.
Right.
And that's a very strong lesson because usually today's words try to teach you uh, that uh, that it's not good to have different ways, okay? Because everything is inclusion, everything is okay. We pardon each other, but people's beliefs that that means to have a relation, okay? But the Torah doesn't teach us that. Sometimes it's better to live far from the other person, because if not, the fear of Jacob was they could contaminate my kids, okay,
Right. Right. It
my
says,
descendants.
the world says, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. But I'm not so sure that's true.
Yeah. So, um, in honestly, uh, because sometimes there are some toxic relationships between persons. And yes, you can have peace with them, but doesn't mean that you have to live together or have a close relationship with them.
Exactly.
Um, so that is very important thing. Then there is something else that I really love. God, God made a promise to Abraham and then to Isaac. And to Isaac, he says, I will bless your sons, and from you and also to Abraham, your descendants will be kingdoms and people. Okay. So that blessing honestly reached also to Esau. Okay. Uh, because sometimes we try to think that Esau was cursed, but he was not. He was blessed by God.
Mhm.
He chose to took another way, okay, another path. So the consequences is until Esau, the God's promise ends, and then for the next generation is like they took another way.
Right.
So in the line of blessing because of their own decisions is through Jacob.
Mhm.
Um, and then we can read, and you mentioned it also, appears the name of Amalek for first time at the Torah. It says that uh, Timas was the mother of Amalek. And Timah, she was not an spouse, she was a concubine.
Mhm.
Okay. So it's very interesting because um, the name of the mother is rejection. That
Mm.
what it means. Okay. The idea is to a person that comes and you reject that person.
Wow.
And then the fruit of that rejection is Sinat Hinam, which is Amalek. Okay.
Right.
And that made me think honestly that um, sometimes we need to have very um, to be careful, okay? Because sometimes we I will talk for me honestly. sometimes there are some persons that are not really compatible to me, are not attractive to me. Okay. And it's not that I am not a good person. No, it's just that for example, I remember when I was kid, there was a kid, honestly, that he was very electric kid. Okay, and he was touching me all the time, and when he was speaking, he throws some like a spit,
Saliva.
yeah, on me. So my own myself, I reject that kid. Okay, even though I met him when I was at the university, I found him several times, and honestly, for me, was like a kind of rejection to him, and I couldn't explain that. Honestly, I knew he was a God's creation, but there was something inside of me that really was hard for me to try to say, oh, come here, friend.
Right.
Okay, you know, and sometimes appear that kind of person in your life. Okay, there are some people, for example, that smells bad. Okay, there are other people that probably have some expressions that are not good for someone. Okay, I don't know. For example, for me, people who laugh like yeah, like that, for me is not good for me. So,
Yeah.
but in this portion is like telling me, okay, you don't want sinat hinam. The sinat hinam comes from the rejection, from to say that person, oh, I don't want you, I don't accept you. And sometimes it's hard, okay, but then needs to appear the also the sinat ahava,
Right.
okay, the free love,
Right.
okay, and this is not something that is like, oh, I need that burns from my heart, from the bottom of my heart, to love everyone. No,
That was the 60s.
sometimes, yeah, sometimes it's a decision.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and it's a conscience and effort thing that you have to do.
Mhm.
Okay, and then suddenly something in your mind change. Okay, so but the point is that for me is something that to prevent Amalek in the world, we need to accept, or at least not really. I don't know what is the right word. Okay, probably it's not accept, but to avoid rejection. That you make feel that other person that is not valuable, that is not good enough. Okay, it's like uh, that sometimes we that persons need, for example, a hug. They need, for example, to say, "Hey, you did it well." Okay, even though that sometimes is hard to do. Okay, um, and then um, also there is something else that appears in what you said, that Jacob was very frightened. Okay, he he continually was oh, like dealing with fears, because there is like a shadow. Okay, I am there is something interesting. Rivka, when she said, okay, my son, all the curse that be on you be on me. Okay, and so, but honestly, Jacob could not be a curse because he was already blessed by Abraham. So, uh, so at the end, it's like sometimes we speak things without knowing the power of our tongue. Okay.
Which is why
Uh,
Yeshua said, "Let your yes be yes and your no be no."
yeah. The rest
Well,
is something. Yeah.
yeah.
But the point is, um, I don't want to say that for that reason probably Rivka died and in her name doesn't appear anymore in the Torah.
Why
Okay,
not? Why not?
because she said that the last thing that appears Rivka is when she had to call Jacob and said to him, "Okay, my son, bye bye, go to Haran." Okay, and then it's not like Rahel, like Leah, or like Sarah, that the Torah explicit says, "Oh, she died and then the sons buried her but in the Torah doesn't mention that. Okay, only the name of Deborah. Okay, that she was I don't know how to say that in English,
Her nurse.
nodriza.
Or
Yeah,
nurse or
yeah,
yeah,
the nurse.
yeah.
But uh, the when she died, the Torah doesn't explicitly says. Okay, but the words of the mother really affects
The son.
Jacob.
Mm.
Okay, because probably when you when she said the curse be on me, uh, is like to put a little seed of fear in your son, because it's like, oh, do I have uh what I did is wrong. Okay, and he was aware that it was wrong. So every time you look at him, it's like there is a doubt. Honestly, am I blessed? Okay, I am paying the consequences of what I did. Okay, uh, right now I'm facing my brother. Probably this is a punishment from God to me for what I did to my dad. You know, there is so many things that could really comes to the mind of a person. Okay, and then also is about also talking. Is about what Jacob said when Laban pursued him because of the idol. And he said, "Oh, I don't have nothing, so let die the one who has the idol." And the one who has the idol was Rachel. And then next is that she dies. Okay. Uh, so, but that really is when there is a person who is a Sadiq. They have the power. The words of a Sadiq have some power. Okay, because even though he doesn't want to do something bad or to curse someone, to desire something bad to Rachel, he didn't know. Probably he could be more prudent about to say those words. Okay, and that is something that also uh, at least I need to have more, to be careful. Okay, for what
We
I
all
say.
we all do.
Yeah. And so, uh, because sometimes I'm not sure the consequences of my words. When, for example, when I call the attention from my kids, I'm not sure sometimes if I put some words of afraid or frightened to my kids. For example, uh, some days ago, we were discussing with my kids at some meal, and we were discussing about the economics, okay, at home. We were discussing things like that they need to know that Um, yeah, we have been blessed by God, but we are not rich. We are not. We are working. We are dealing. In sometimes he said, one of them told to us, okay, sometimes I'm not sure where am I, and I remember that I had to think about until what what is the doses that he needs to hear. It's important to explicit said to them, oh, you know, there are limits on our economy, okay, but sometimes we don't need to be so explicit that they were afraid, may I buy this or may I not buy this? Probably it is something that we need to deal with kids. Um, but also that doesn't mean, for example, that we are under condition of poverty, that we cannot pay, for example, the education. Okay, so um, so that comes to my mind because um, when Jacob talks, everybody talks in the Torah, there is some kind of power in our mouth. Okay, so uh, for that reason we need to talk with wisdom. Okay, with love, but more than everything, with fear of God. Okay, because if not, we can spread some wrong message to the listeners.
I think
Okay,
that's why God gave us two eyes, two ears, two noses, one mouth.
yeah, and it's very very hard. So, but and also there is something else in this portion is about Dina. Okay,
Right. I didn't speak it.
um, so you know, Dina, honestly, there is a principle there. First of all, we need to protect the girls. Okay, that she it seems okay, it's not written explicit, but it seems that she went to Shechem alone.
Right.
Okay, okay, without brothers. Okay, without protection.
Right. She snuck out.
Yeah, and she was a little girl. She was not a woman of 30 years old. Okay, so we don't know exactly um, to what kind of men she 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 was in front of. Okay, but also there is something else that the God tries to expose. Uh, the justice taken like Esau is not good. Why? Because Levi and Shimeon didn't think what they did. They just act for impulse,
It
for
it was
vengeance.
it wasn't justice, it was revenge.
It was revenge. Yeah, it was not justice. It was revenge. So it is like they act like Esau, because Esau honestly was blessed because of the ark, was blessed because of the um for the mighty hand. Okay, for power, for submission. And now the kids of Jacob, honestly, they don't stop to think about what were the consequences of of deceiving those people. According to the Midrashim, that is something that sometimes appears just to try to justify them. Okay. Oh no, Shechem and all his people uh, will try to come to Jacob and kill after the circumcision. So God protects them. Okay. But that is not written. What it seems that they knew exactly what they gonna do. Okay. They didn't act. They just act. They didn't think the actions.
But it
So
also seems that she was kidnapped because
yes.
because she went, when the boys went, they took her out of his house. She had been kidnapped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also, for that moment was customary that when you have uh, relations with a girl, automatically is like she's my wife, okay? Because it doesn't exist something like today that there is a
Wedding.
contract, wedding,
Right.
religious service. Okay,
Right. Right.
no, we have relation, and then
Yeah.
now you are my wife.
Right.
Okay, so uh, probably was not really kidnapped because uh,
He
it's
considered
just that
her his
yeah,
wife.
as my wife. Yeah, because that is his thought.
Yeah.
Okay, that was the custom of that time. So, um, but at the end, what they do is, okay, we're gonna take this man because the problem is he never went to Jacob to present himself.
Right.
Okay, to say, oh, Mr. Jacob, I want to take your Dina's
Right.
girl as my wife.
Yeah.
Okay, and
Yeah.
that is the problem. So. Uh, But Jacob doesn't mention that he went to try to rescue Dinah also.
Oh, yeah.
It's like accepting uh in so but the problem is that the brothers is like they took the Jacob's I don't know if that is patient or when
An
he
action.
said
Did
an
nothing.
action.
Yeah.
Yeah, I cannot do nothing. Okay, so like weakness. Okay, so we're gonna take the justice in our hand because our father is a coward.
Mm.
Okay, so so they never thought on the consequences. So that's why he loves the sons. He never cursed them. What later we read that he cursed the action that
Mhm.
the sons did. Okay, why? Because it's like an emulation of Esau. Okay,
It's like a what?
Eh, they emulate Esau. Okay,
Yeah.
they it's like, oh, we're gonna act like not like Jacob but like Esau.
Right.
Okay, so um at the end they were brothers. Okay, so and also there is a last thing I want to talk, and it's about that I've been thinking about this point. To light Jacob knew Esau. Okay, so and that is a little bit deep question. Okay, because Esau had a role, but he took the wrong decisions. Okay, he decided to sell the first one. He decided to leave the by like hunter. He decided to marry to the three different wives that breaks the heart of Isaac in Rivka. So he had consequences. Okay, but also Jacob need Esau to grow. Why? Because he need to face Esau. Okay,
Right.
and sometimes in our lives we need to deal with those Esau to grow.
Right.
So uh, it, and it's normal, and that is something beautiful on the Torah, because uh, fear is not a problem. An action is a problem.
Right.
Um, and, and, and he recognized to God, oh God, honestly, I am afraid. Okay. I I I'm shaking because of my brother, okay, because of my kids, because of my wife. Um but at the end, yes, he prayed to God, but also took some decisions in order to uh, to reduce the risk. Okay, he first sent messengers, then the messengers uh, talk very good word to your servant Jacob, or my master Esau. Okay, and also send some gifts, and not once, not twice, not three times, but
Yeah.
four times.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
you know, sometimes when because I have learned too much. Okay, but sometimes I can see in our society today, probably in Canada is the very same. But sometimes, for example, I have a discussion with somebody. Okay, that person becomes an Esau for me. Okay, and, and we said, okay, we need to face that person. But the so I'm not sure if I have to text, okay, or if I have to send a message, or to a voice, or to call that person, because it's better to let it go. Okay, the problems will fix alone.
Mhm.
That is something wrong they need to face.
Mhm.
And then when you have to face, there is pride sometimes, because you don't come like uh, like for example, I have seen many person who has lost their job because of pride.
Mhm.
At the first discussion with the boss, they don't have that attitude of Jacob,
Mhm.
okay, to call them my lord.
Mhm.
No, they call, oh, that person, that engineer is blah 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 blah, and it's against. People feels that.
Yeah.
People knows when it's not really honest what you are saying. Uh, so uh, so sometimes you call that person Mister or Mistress, whatever. I want to have a meeting, and
Mhm.
that person probably is like Esau with 400 people try to kill you. Okay, and then sometimes after the first call, after the first message, then even though you don't send not even a cookie, okay, like a gift, a chocolate,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and and you said, oh no, that person, we cannot talk with that person. it's not possible. I try. God, I try. Okay. But what Jacob did went to Esau 4 times. Okay. And sometimes we don't face that person not once. Okay. So that is just to think about that honestly this portion have many things that teach us for daily life. Okay. That uncle, that cousin, that uh, person that we have many times and they become like a Saul. Oh, we have 20 years of not talking. That's what Jacob had the problem, the very same problem. Okay, so it never is late. We need to be humble. We need to treat that persons with sweetie words, not adulation, but honestly to be humble. And also we need to send sometimes gift, okay, not bribery, gift, and, and take actions to pray to God, because what will happen? Yeah, in the first hand, Esau is looking something material. Okay, he was a rich person, so to have 200 more flock is doesn't mean nothing to him. Okay, but also Jacob was praying to touch the heart of Esau. Oh, my brother probably changed. Okay, he comes from Laban and he survived. Okay, so so that is something to practice daily.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. I wonder, because you and I have to deal with just regular people in our lives. But I've been listening to some of the survivors of being in the tunnels in Gaza and their stories, the ones who obviously they survived because we were speaking to them, and listening to some of them what they did to make it through. Like one I listened to, and he was an engineer, and he used his engineering background to to look for a way to escape. He had to look within himself during the darkness. He doesn't mention God at all, but you can see that I don't know how to put it. I I I I let me go to another woman who I listened to, and there was something in her where she did find God in the tunnels, and her behavior, her speaking to these people was different than some of the others who had no hope and who cowered in fear. He would speak to them. Actually, this man, the engineer, would speak to them about Abraham, about Moses, that was also in their Quran. He would speak to them at a different level, knowing that they finding things in common with them. It's very hard to know how we would act in a moment in those type of situations, and how we have to learn how to deal with our fear in those moments, because things are not getting easier. The 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 world is kind of heating up, as they say, and we need to look at not only. I mean, we don't know what we would do in those situations, but all we can do is to keep moving ahead in the small amounts of things that we fear today, and little by little, maybe God will help us to deal with the really, really difficult ones, because we don't know what we're going to have to go through. You know, that whole idea about revenge and leaving revenge to God, it's not easy for us. I listened to a a video. I watched a video this week about how in the United States and Canada we had what was called the Jewish mafia. These were tough guys. My father was a tough guy. He wasn't a holy man in any way. He was not educated. He was, fought in the war. He was a tough man. He would to me be like a Samson, you know. And these guys like Meyer Lansky, some so there was a judge in New York who called Meyer Lansky because the Nazi Party was growing in strength in New York. Thousands of people, brown shirts they called them, were marching down the streets of New York. And people were, they were starting to gain more and more and more members for their cause against the Jews. So this Jewish judge called Meyer Lansky and he said, "Do you know anybody? Do you have people who will go to their meetings? Don't kill them, but stop them." And the Jewish mafia raised up all across America and stopped the brown shirts, the Nazis. They would beat them up. And I was looking at that and I was happy. I was glad that these people were being, you know, taken care of, that these people were being stopped. So, I sometimes don't know where, what battles to choose. Where do we stand up? What do we fight against? There's so many meetings that we have. Every organization here is calling for help, is calling for money to fight against anti-Semitism. And yet when we look at the Torah, we see the root of anti-Semitism is lies in like that two-sided coin. One side, we, the people of God, are disobedient to our God, and the other side is the sinat chinam. So, it's a daily battle to know how to live in this world right now, how to make the right choices. It's relatively easy, in for us because we don't see the brown shirts yet marching down the street. And yet here in Montreal, I see my granddaughters coming face to face every single day with people who are these pro-Palestinian marches at her university. And people, it's causing the government here to make new laws that say there will be no more freedom of expression, no more head coverings, even if it's a kippah, no more face coverings, no more praying in the streets, no more praying in a public place. So little by little, we're watching the scenario. So for us, it's really important, honestly, right now, to cling to God and to use every opportunity that we have to trust Him, to learn to trust Him more and more by facing the little fears that we have. And they may be a small thing, like calling somebody up that we really don't want to speak to, but we know we have to deal with an issue. By saying no to something, by saying yes to something else, by stepping in. So it's just like Jacob. Jacob took 20 years to build up enough till God said, "Okay, it's time, you can go home now. You can face your brother." And even then, he still had to wrestle. So these stories are very important for us to learn and to listen to. There is nothing more important now than the Torah for us.
I think one thing, like you're telling the story about Meyer Lansky, etc., like the certain things aren't mutually exclusive. Like when I was watching that, I was also going, yay, yay, yay. But it doesn't mean that God can't use, if something has to be done. They got rid of the Nazi threat in New York.
Right.
It doesn't mean we look at that as a principle. That was an expediency. It had to be done right then and there. But we have to go back and say, that's not the cure for the world, and it's not an example I want to take. Because
Right.
as we know, Mario Lansky not only murdered, these guys not only murdered people, but if you know what mafia tactics are, brutally murdered innocent people.
Right.
So There's no way I'm going to support that. And I'm not going to extract from that a principle for my life.
Right.
At the moment, they did the job. There's no one else who's going to do the job. They got the job done. And for
Right.
a while, the Nazis, you don't see those kind of rallies, except, so anyway, I'm just saying that you can't, it's like talking about apples and oranges. At that moment, you had to get rid of that threat, but
Right.
we don't extract that as a principle. I don't consider Meyer Lansky my hero.
Right.
So anyway, that's just something we have to discern in our walk with God. It's got to be a walk with God. We can't take, certain things as being our heroes. It's
Right.
funny, I was listening to a video, a really interesting video the other day, and this former witch was being interviewed, and her whole family had a history of witchcraft, and it was very scary. And anyway, she came out of that and she turned to God. And she made a statement about the world now. Like we talk about secularism. She said, I'm not going to talk about secularism. Of course, that's bad, but that's not where the world is now. She said, she's talking about blood and Satanism. It's always about blood, always about blood. And she said, look at abortion now. She says that without people knowing it, it's pleasing to Satan. Whether you believe in Satan or not, that's another story. And she's talking about that. She said, we are living not in a secular era, but in a satanic pagan. We're living in paganism now. And that was sort of shocking to hear her put it like that. It's almost like, okay, with secular people, they're not beyond discussion or beyond reaching. They're not necessarily immoral people. Okay, I'm not a lot of secular people who at some point might be open, whatever. But to hear her say that, she says, no, we're in a pagan, we're fighting just the way, the Israelites were surrounded by people who offered their kids to Moloch and to the pagan gods. So that's what we're in now.
That's why when we brush over a simple statement like Jacob's told all his household to get rid of their idols, to get rid of their gods. We just may brush over it. And they
Yeah.
were buried under the terebinth tree, which was a place where the pagan rituals would take place at these terebinths. So it's like God is saying, get rid of these idols in your lives. Have no, like we the first commandment, don't put any other gods upon my face. Don't cover me over with any other gods, any other idols. Those are the first two commandments. They're really important.
Yeah.
Mauricio, you were going to say something? No, okay. Well, I know that I can um, ask others if they have opinions, but I know they won't answer. So they leave it to us, and I'm sure they do. But anyway, thank you for sharing. Let's keep praying for each other. Keep praying that um, we can learn how to take one day at a time and just trust Him and be grateful for everything, single thing that He's blessed us with. You know, we missed that last week, but I remember reading in that chapter 27. I wasn't here. 20, 20 times it mentioned the word blessing. And I have a picture in my head about a father of a home taking the spiritual lead and blessing their children. Every week we bless our children, and that does something in to the lives of our children. In our community, when we have anointed someone, when we have given smicha, that person is blessed for their roles. May each of us be blessed for the roles that we are given by God in this world, and they're all different. We have to come in to find our role, and may we all be blessed in that. So I want to wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom, and we look forward to seeing you all again next week, God willing.
Shabbat shalom,
Shabbat
everybody.
Shabbat
Shabbat
shalom,
shalom.
shalom.
everyone. Shabbat shalom. Bye.
Shalom.
Bye.